Jamie, just driving into work, and I wanted to share a little shift that happened in my body this morning. Little big shift. So, I get up every morning and have time for a movement practice. And for the past many, many months, my body has been really drawing me primarily to forms of like a movement practice that feels fun and delightful and pleasure focused. And so one thing that's meant is like we have like a subscription to like Peloton, like not the kind with the bike, but like the floor exercises and stuff. And I used to do them a lot. Like strength workouts and cardio workouts where you really push yourself hard and you're like shaky and sweaty at the end. And there was a time where I was like, wow, that really helped me. It helped my anxiety, And then there was a time where it started to feel not like what my body wanted. Instead, I've been doing what, to the hardcore type A part of my brain, like softer, not real exercise. So a lot of fitness martial, which I've talked to you about before, like cardio dance, a lot of just simple, like playing music and just like dancing to it. Sometimes honestly, just like lying down and reading a book instead of doing movement. And then more recently running as it's been getting warmer. And there's been this like underlying worry that like I have gone, I don't know, soft or, I'm not doing real exercise. Diet / health culture parts of me have tied the size of my belly or amount of adipose tissue to it, et cetera, et cetera. And I've just been really firmly just like saying, I hear all of that and I'm waiting for the impulse to do it. And, like even like the coaching training I've done before is like, don't wait for motivation. You start doing and you get it. And I know that's true. Like that's, when I was doing the Peloton stuff, there'd be things where, my brain would be like, I can't possibly do it. And I'd be like, well, let's try anyway. And I'd be like, wow, I can do it. So like that is useful as well and hasn't been what I've been focused on for like the past many months, maybe even a full year. I can't remember. And then this morning I had like what maybe was one of my first genuine impulses to like feel the kind of pain that you feel when you're working out hard. Like to feel that discomfort. I remember you talking about once where you're like, you were working through something and you was like, oh, I just gotta go like lift some heavy shit and like feel that discomfort. I felt that as like a genuine, still kind of like pleasure focused, like desire and impulse this morning. And I did it. And I did one of like the ones that I liked doing the most because they're hard and they're sweaty and you feel kind of sick at the end. I didn't feel that this way, which was nice because, I don't prefer that particular expression all the time. And I just thought that was so fascinating. Like there's all these different narratives of like, you'll never feel like it, so you gotta just do it anyway. And that can be a really helpful narrative, especially if you have a fear thing and you've never tried it and you're, like there's something amazing about doing it and noticing how your brain isn't accurate at predicting what you're capable of, right? And it's also really cool to notice how if that's not, like for me, that's just not the season of life I'm in where I'm like, I have to prove to myself what I'm capable of, probably because I've already done that. And I'm now like, I now don't have a concept of the limits of what I'm capable of. I just more have trust as well as knowledge that like, I'm capable of many, 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 many things. And I won't do most of those things because life is short and I am mortal. And I trust that the things that I am focused on doing, I can do to a level, to a skill, with a level of fervor, with a widening impact beyond even what I could even imagine. Like, I'm not putting limits on what is possible for me already. And sort of it's interesting that within that, then my body is like giving me these little impulses to stretch myself, to practice pleasurable discomfort, perhaps is the term that comes to me and what it felt like this morning. And I just think that's so delightful. And, all of my anxious, worried, trying to her sweet, sweet best to predict brain. Didn't see that coming. And the more I've really tended to that part of myself and said, I hear you and let's just see what happens. Like, it's really cool what the body has revealed on her own, without me having to do a plan or read a book. And I love those things too, by the way, but like, it's neat what has emerged in this space. Like, the exercise health space is so fraught with conflicting and often shame-based messages. And so having really tried to erase them completely, it's cool to see what is emerging in its wake, So I had to share that with you. Bodies are awesome, right?
You know what, Joan? It's so interesting that you sent me this voice memo this morning, because I woke up to seeing it on my phone, and then I did a couple morning routine things and then went for a run. And yesterday, in the afternoon, evening, I ran 2 miles consecutively and felt really excited and proud of myself for that, because it's been many, many years since I've done that. And that felt really good in my body and felt like a decent challenge. And this morning, while I was walking to the track that I run on, I just had this kind of like, David White's beautiful question moment, like, what if I could, about 3 miles. And ultimately, once I got to the track, I was like, let's just see what happens. Because I know I can run too. So if my brain or body tries to tell me at any point in those first 8 laps that I'm not capable of this, like, well, that's a lie. I have data to disprove that. And so I can get to the place of like perseverance if that comes up. And then after that point, it's all just experimental. I can just make this like a game. Like, I'm curious about 3. I'm not like, I have to run 3 miles today. And I have a suspicion that since I'm just curious about 3, and I know I can do more than 2, and by the time I'm done with 2, I will have circled this track 8 times. What's 4 more? It was just like this awareness that I am pretty sure I've got it in me. And if I don't, it doesn't matter, because, no one's grading my test. This is just like, I'm playing, I'm experimenting, and I'm seeing what feels good. And yeah, I ran 3 miles, and it's been even longer since I've done that. And as I was walking back from that run, I pressed play on this voice memo. And there is that story that apparently you and your body had a very similar experience this morning. And I just think that's really cool, like very cool, very interesting that across space and time, many, many thousands of miles apart, both of our bodies woke up this morning and chose resilience. And in general, I just am delighted to hear this from you and to have experienced my own version of it in my body for 2 reasons. Number one, it feels amazing to exercise that skill of resilience, to expand that capacity. It just like feels good innately. And for those of us who had more kind of punishing, controlling, what have you, relationships to our bodies previously, it is definitely, I don't know, it's a huge, I'll speak for myself. It's a huge relief that I can still like access and utilize this skill of resilience on more compassionate terms. And in fact, as with pretty much everything else that happens in and through and with our bodies, like compassion is always more potent and successful. And I've just found that over and over and over in my career about big things, small things, movement-based things, food-based things, anything that we have like a complicated feeling about in the direction of ourselves and the direction of our body. Compassion is just the smarter way, actually. Like, it yields the better results, and it's not the familiar way for most of us for a long time. But that's, again, what's so fun about this, like, second pleasurable component of these experiences is like, I remember how it used to feel, and it doesn't feel that way anymore. And I feel so proud of myself, and I feel so grateful to my body and to everyone who, was my teacher in this experience. And just, it brings up all these additional good feelings. So I feel really grateful to be on this path with you, running, dancing alongside you. Yeah, and I've had just a really gorgeous, straightforward, simple past couple of days since our recording, just diving really deep into sessions with people and moving as slowly as I can and exercising that mechanism of resilience in thousands of different ways. And just overall, just extraordinarily enjoying the experience of being here, just all here, every present moment. And I hope you're enjoying being all there, all here, there, in your present moment this Thursday evening. And I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, Jamie. I am out on a walk run, and it is Good Friday. And just was running and listening to your voice memo. And now I'm walking, so I'm going to reply. And I have like this convergence of thoughts that I'm going to try and just thread the needle of making coherent. And I'm going to land it. I'm just speaking, I'm manifesting what's about to happen. So, one thing is Good Friday. In some ways, from growing up in evangelical Christianity, the use of Good Friday and Easter weekend as a time for the metaphor of death and rebirth almost feels like a cliche or like overused. So like, apologies if it's landing stale for you, but I'm noticing it yet again and probably forever being just a really powerful example of a metaphor of what happens if we allow something that needs to die. And I'm not even going to go into if Jesus needed to die. I don't mean it like that. I just mean I'm taking it away from the Jesus of it all, but just into the death and rebirth part, okay? Like, when we allow things to die that are dying, what then gets to be reborn in nature the way it looks is not, rising from the dead in the same corporeal form, but instead things naturally die and then get composted and metabolized into nutrients that then are the building blocks of new things to come, right? And so that's really actually my favorite analogy for the death rebirth cycle, rather than the reanimation of Jesus Christ, a specific person. Not hating on, but just saying like that's the metaphor that really like resounds the most for me at this point in my life. And I think about how this whole season's about death. And I think about how perhaps those listening at first glance will hear our conversation about being open to new ways of movement and open to new possibilities of what our bodies are capable of in sort of the exercise realm, and perhaps not even see how that connects with the rest of our conversation, like the one we just had around healthcare. I love making connections, so I'm going to do that for myself and anyone who's listening who might find it helpful. What comes to mind is what you always say, and how I love that you always say, which is how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And for myself personally, it may feel like this side quest of like reclaiming exercise or something, or like reclaiming ways to move my body, rediscovering and exploring new possibilities for what my body is capable of in this like what we call the exercise movement health. Some of those words are so no thank you for me, but, in that realm. But truly, because I am doing that work simultaneous with doing the same work in my healthcare space, like each time I prove to myself through these embodied experiments of movement, including, look,
I am worthy and wonderful and feel great when I'm not in like hardcore training mode. And also, look, I can actually have arise in me that wonderful, curious question of like, and what if I could, to restart doing and maybe find a totally new way to do strength exercises, right? Like, which is my experiment from yesterday. So when I allow the old dying story of exercise is only supposed to be self-punishing, exercise is a duty I have, otherwise I'm failing the righteous health dogma that pervades much of our society, letting go of that completely, allowing that to die, and then seeing what is reborn from the nutrients of it, which has included like fitness martial and the strength stuff, and who knows what's to come, That same thing, I then have somatic understanding and my body understands that's a safe process to go through, including at my work. And I think back for the past several years, like letting go of the dying dogmas that exist in healthcare spaces. So one specific example is the dogma that as the physician, I need to be the capital E expert, which to me in the dogma way means I need to have all of the answers. So if a patient comes to me and they ask me a question, I don't know the answer, deep shame fills my body and I feel like a failure, imposter syndrome, whatever you call it. I make a decision and then the outcome doesn't end up being what I predicted. Deep shame because I was the expert. I'm supposed to know exactly what's going to happen. It must have been my error because I'm a fraud, because I'm a bad doctor, right? Like the expert corset, the expert cage, the shame-based set of ideas really. The more I have allowed that idea to die, as the absurd idea it is, how on earth could we have all the answers? Literally, no one has all the answers. Even the totality of the knowledge we now have about medicine and bodies is continuing to expand and unfold and remake itself, because that's like what science is and that's what discovery is, right? Plus, no single human could even hold all the knowledge we have so far in their cranium. Are you kidding me? Of course not. And so like letting go of that and allowing that idea to die and seeing what emerges from the ashes, what emerges from the compost, is like the exact same ingredients. Like then curiosity can re-enter the exam room with patients. And compassion, which, you think there's a version of compassion that is kind of codependent, people-pleasing, fawning, performing kindness so that our patients don't sue us. And that's yet another sort of dogma story that needs to die. But instead, like authentic compassion emerges and just connection with patient emerges. And I wanted to give you a specific example, though stripped of patient identifying details, of course, that happened literally yesterday. Talking to a patient that we don't have an easy box to put them in allopathic medicine at all, right? And so much so that my journey with this human is really like, let's just explore where you're at. Let's just explore what makes sense to you and seeing what emerges for them as it goes along. But like the specific thing they said to me yesterday, talking about like one specific set of symptoms, is like, I noticed that for these symptoms, as I have been sort of healing this part of my like emotional trauma journey, these symptoms have gone away. It's almost as if my body was telling me something through emotion, but because I was trained to ignore my emotions, instead my body started expressing them as like these physical symptoms. But now that I am actually listening to my emotions and taking care of them, the symptoms don't need to be there anymore. Like literally, that's almost word for word what they said. And I was just like, if Jamie was in this room, she'd be doing a happy dance. Because that's like what you say all the time, right? And that's such an expression of the most beautiful parts of the German new medicine stuff that you've shared with me that I'm, as you know, I'm not fully on board with, but that idea of it, I think is like really powerful. So that's how those things connect with me. Like whichever corner of your life you're doing the project of allowing something to die, and then with curiosity and compassion, seeing what emerges, that will open doors and possibilities for all the other parts of your life. And like, how cool is that? So that's my like Good Friday sermon for you this morning. I'm going to keep running. I will also note that my quads are extra sore and stiff this morning, which makes sense because they got a workout they're not used to recently. And so I'm just allowing them to let me know the pace that we're setting, and I'm still moving despite of it. And especially after listening to your voice memo, I'm going to recommit to asking the question, like, what if I could? What's possible here? So love you, Jamie. Bye.
Hello, my dear. I am once again walking as well. Update about this little church track that I walk and now run on here when I'm in Nashville. I have met one of the deacons of this church. He was out mowing the lawn on Good Friday, actually around the time that I was listening to your voice memo. And he was in one of those big riding mowers, and he stopped mowing at one point when I was kind of near where he was. And he was like, "Excuse me, I don't mean to like interrupt your laps or anything, but I just wanted to introduce myself," and told me that he is not only one of the deacons at this church, but he's like, "I live right there, like right next door to the church." And he made sure to tell me that if I'm ever out here by myself and anything makes me uncomfortable, or if there's ever anyone around, I can just go over and knock on his door and let him know. And he made sure to tell me that I'm always welcome here on this track, and that he's really glad to see someone using it. And I got the lovely gift of telling him that for me, in my experience, the existence of this track is very much a gift from God. That is how I am experiencing it, because I knew I needed a place to be able to consistently move my body. And around the time that I kind of sent that desire up into the universe, I went on a walk one day around the area and discovered this lovely place. So that's my little church track update. Deacon Roy is a new friend. Very glad to know him. It is now Easter Monday. It has been quite the weekend. Shortly after finishing my run here on Friday, after listening to your voice memo, I went back to the house and got things ready for a client to come over and enter into our, appropriately, I suppose, into the holiday 3-day-long container of their first psilocybin journey, which I got to sit for them for. So we did some intention setting on Friday evening, and then the journey was Saturday and took up the majority of that day, and then did some integration and body work Sunday morning. And it was a really, really beautiful experience. Very different from my client that I sat for last month, obviously. Very different, unique individuals. But one of the things that made this different is my client back in March, there was like a lot of like kind of this one main emergent theme that felt really, I don't want to say dramatic because that's not the right word, but just like a big shift that needed to be made. And that felt really amazing for them to like identify that this big shift needed to be made. And for my client this past weekend, it was more of like the allowance of the subtle shifts back in the direction of wonder and joy. And the energy was light and joyful, and it was a bit more engaging. There was a bit more processing that this client wanted and needed to do like during. But a lot of that processing was like, wow, isn't it all amazing? So like, it was such a delightful experience. And as I think about these, like your voice memo and the Easter of it all, and these two different psychedelic experiences that these two different people had, and then also some just like personal things I'm processing, I feel like I'm really aware today of just like the ways in which this thing you're referring to of like when we allow former ideas or ideologies or identities or thoughts or beliefs to go, to die, when we let them go, there is this spacious realm of possibility for the new to emerge. I'm really aware of the ways in which that can, sometimes show up as these like intense, dramatic alignments in our lives. And equally, and sometimes on some level, maybe even more importantly, because these happen way more frequently, are just the moments and the times where we can just kind of like gently wake ourselves up and become aware of what is coming out of our mouths right now, or become aware of like this thought pattern that I'm looping in my mind that I'm like, I'm not enjoying, but I'm doing. What am I doing? And just like, just these ways in which we can gently, subtly course correct ourselves. And like, I will often explain it to my clients as like, kind of just like taking ourselves 1 degree back in the direction of alignment. And we could say that, similarly as, taking ourselves 1 degree back in the direction of like wonder and joy and ease. Ease was actually a big theme for both of these clients, expressed in different ways. And that's definitely, I had a breathwork session Friday morning, and which is kind of the only psychedelic I do now is my breath. And I'm really loving it. And I do a trade with a practitioner here in Nashville who's excellent. And this was my 3rd session with him. And when I came out of it, I looked at him and I was like, I went through the door. Like there, a lot of times people will, when talking about breath work, they'll tell you there's kind of like this, this threshold, this doorway, this sort of like portal that you can find yourself going through in those experiences. Again, very similar to psychedelics, which when I'm sober sitting for people, I will speak very plainly about kind of the where and the when and the how of that door and the resistance versus surrender. And so maybe I should not have been that surprised to find that when I found myself at that threshold during this breathwork session, which isn't even the most accurate way to put it, because what I said to this practitioner was that I went through it. So I went through the door. I went through that threshold that people talk about with this kind of work. And what's fascinating is I just kind of like, it felt like I almost just like woke up there. Like I just like found myself there effortlessly because, surprise, surprise, going through or getting through that threshold was a matter of, surrender and ease, not effort and striving. And it was when I let go and stopped trying that I went through. And that right there, in my opinion, is one of the strongest, oldest, most substantial stories in our consciousness as humans that really, really needs and deserves to die. The idea that we can only get to where we're going or where we want to go or like be who we want to be or who we came here to be, however you want to frame it. Like it kind of doesn't really matter the specific language or path. Like underneath all of it, it's like we've got this addiction to the struggle. And increasingly, so many areas in my life and so many conversations I'm having with clients and so many things I'm reading from people I follow on Substack. And we're at this point, this threshold moment where we're being asked whether or not we would like to hang on to the story that Our suffering and our efforting and our striving is what makes us worthy of the enjoyment on the other side, which is an illusion, because if you are struggling and efforting and striving right now, that is how your life feels right now. And so that is how your life is going to feel, quote unquote, on the other side, because there is no other side of now. It's just now. So the question then becomes like, can you just set all of that down now? Can you set that story down now and let it be easy? Can you relax into the fact that there is actually nothing to fix or accomplish or do or struggle with or against or through, like right now? If you decide, if you choose, like you really can choose to find something to struggle with, or you can choose to take a deep breath and let ease happen to you. And that isn't to say that there won't be experiences in our lives that are challenging. And I said this to some friends last night, actually, where one of them said something about how like parenting is hard. And I was like, yeah, and I really wish people would stop talking about it as if that's all it is. Because I feel like everything I see and read these days on like Instagram is just like, mothering is hard, parenting is hard, this is hard. And that's not untrue. But what you stare at is going to be illuminated in your experience. What else is it? What else is pushing yourself, in alignment with your body, like on a run? It's hard and it's exhilarating. What else is parenting? It's hard and it's the most interesting and expansive thing I've ever done. And when I focus on that it is the most interesting and expansive thing I've ever done, my body relaxes. And now I'm in a state of ease, even in the midst of the thing that, sure, is hard and is challenging. But based on the story, I've decided to choose the thought I've decided to choose. Based on that is how my body feels in the midst of the experience. I hope all this makes sense. I am just in the midst of, similar to you in your last voice memo, just like kind of feeling I'm processing through a lot right now, and I'm kind of feeling the convergence of themes like in my body as I'm walking today. So yeah, things have been ruminating for a few days, and so I wanted to just take a moment and share all of that with you. And I hope that you're having a beautiful Easter Monday, and I'll talk to you later. Love you, bye.
This is Experiential Anatomy. Thanks for listening. I'm Joan Chan.
And I'm Jamie Lee Finch. Experiential Anatomy is co-hosted and created by us.
Amber Wyndham is the editor. Julia Wyndham is the supervising producer.
Senior producer is Elizabeth Wyndham. Aaron Beatty leads our community management.
Our theme music is Park Pier 3 by G's Guy.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or stories to share about this week's episode, email us at exanatomy@gmail.com.
Please follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember to join us over at exanatomy.substack.com.
Experiential Anatomy is produced by Windhaven Productions.